So a little catch up I've been playing during this too much time on my hands period of life is a documentary from just a couple of years ago called Echo in the Canyon. I'd heard great things about this. Friends had seen it and loved it. It was on many people's best of last year movie lists. And I just didn't get a chance to see it in the theater, and it popped up on. It's on several of the streaming services. I believe I saw it on Netflix. And basically, the story of Echo in the Canyon is that it's Jakob Dylan of Wallflowers and Bob Dylan fame, son of, and he goes on this journey of discovery with people who were involved in the Echo Canyon, LA music scene in California in the 1960s. So it is the story of that region and the music and the people who lived there in that time and their collaborations and how they influenced each other. And it is the story of several bands who sprung up or flowered, shall we say, in that era of, mid to late 60s. So you have the Beach Boys, you have the Byrds, you have Crosby, Stills and Nash, the various members intermingling. You have Mamas and the Papas. Sorry, I was just envisioning Mama Cass for a moment there. You have it's so many people, and you have additional people. People who are surviving members of those bands are heavily involved in this. You have people in bands who were influenced by these groups. You have people who are contemporary. You have music scholars. You have historians. You have all kinds of people painting this picture of how people were inspired by each other. People helped each other out. You have the tales of how certain songs were recorded. You go back to the studio where the Mamas and the Papas recorded some of their big hits with Michelle Phillips or Lou Adler, and they're talking about, this is the spot where we did this, and it's amazing, and it's intercut with Jakob Dylan and some friends, talking about that music, and it's Beck and it's Fiona Apple and some other people, and they put on a concert apparently, which would have been, I don't know if it's on the Blu-ray or not, but that would be a hell of a good extra, which would be this entire concert that these contemporary artists did of music from that period in that location. And it's just such a love letter to that time and place. Tom Petty is in it throughout, and he's fantastic, and he had me laughing out loud a couple of times with some quips. The music is so damn good, and it's one of those things where I was in Memphis recently, and I drove past the Stax Museum, and I was listening to a playlist of music that came from Stax, and this is music from one year, from one location in this country, and how many incredibly good songs and performances came out of this one spot. And that's what made me think, watching Echo in the Canyon brought that back to me. It's like, this was just one relatively small location where these people congregated and inspired each other, by the times and what they were doing, and created music that still seems contemporary and edgy and better than a lot of, hate to sound like a fogey, but better than a lot of what's come since. And to see, those things reinterpreted by new artists is very interesting and fun. How much, there's some really great stories. There's some wacky stories. There's some warts and all material in here where you see Stephen Stills and David Crosby and Neil Young talking about how their various bands came apart at times. And there's a certain sting to some of the comments still 50 years later after these things have happened. Some great period footage taken from different archives and TV appearances, and it was a great documentary. I know there have been other documentaries about Laurel Canyon. I feel like there may have been a PBS special in recent years, and I know there was a BBC radio special that dug even deeper into it with more running time. But if you love music, Echo in the Canyon is fantastic. If you love any of the artists who are involved, even the ones who are just there paying tribute to these original artists, it's fantastic. It's beautifully shot. If you loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it brings a lot of that back to my mind. It did. And it was just, I watched it on a weekday afternoon with, the sun, sort of the golden glows of the sun coming through the blinds here. And it made me feel like, just for a moment, that I was there, that I was listening to those records and seeing those bands and experiencing that journey for all these different people. And it was quite wonderful. So Echo in the Canyon, it's about 90 minutes. If you see this, if you like it, if you want to see more like this, I would recommend, there's a spate of documentaries in the last few years about classic music. One was called 20 Feet from Stardom, which I loved. One was called Muscle Shoals, which was incredible. There's one called Sound City that I haven't watched yet. There's so many of these documentaries now about music movements and studios and session players, and they're all worth watching because everybody's got a story to tell, and the music is fantastic.